Bessent warns all options are on the table for Russia sanctions. Russia's Putin hails unprecedented ties with China as talks begin. And why no agreements on trilateral summit with US and Ukraine? We'll talk about this with political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko. Alexandra, glad to see you and thank you for joining us.
And thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Alexandra, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told Fox News in an exclusive interview that all options are on the table as the Trump administration weighs sanctions on Russia after dictator Vladimir Putin continued to bombard Ukraine despite recent talks about peace. When Scott Bessent says all options are on the table, does that include secondary sanctions against countries still trading with Russia, such as China or India? How soon can we expect a decision on new sanctions, given that every day of delay means more Ukrainian cities are under bombardment?
Scott Bessent is one of those representatives of the Trump administration who's been quite harsh on Russia. I must say we didn't know about his positions regarding Vladimir Putin or regarding Russia in general before Scott Bessent became the part of the Trump administration. He has been the businessman, let's say. But while the hearings were ongoing in the Congress, when Scott Bessent was going through those hearings, we heard him, let's say, express some very critical views on Russia and on Russian dictator Vladimir Putin and on, in general, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine and the invasion of Ukraine and how Russia is supposed to be under sanctions and how Russia must be sanctioned way harsher than it had been sanctioned before. We've heard that while Scott Bessent was going through the hearings in the Congress. And right now, Scott Bessent is on the side, let's put it this way, on the side of Marco Rubio and those representatives of the Trump administration who really want to push Russia and make Russia come to the negotiations table, because we see there is no sign, absolutely no sign that Putin would stop his warmongering on Ukraine and trying to get more of Ukraine territory and trying to kill more Ukrainians and basically erase Ukraine from the geopolitical map. Nothing points to the fact that Putin wants to stop. No, he's a warmonger, and that is it. We are seeing it with our own eyes. And Scott Bessent, being a part of the Trump administration, and what we've seen with the Trump administration are negotiations, more and more negotiations, and the attempts to get diplomatically Putin to the table and diplomatically trying to get Putin to stop. This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen. And Scott Bessent is most probably advising for, let's say, more sanctions, although I'm not sure that we're going to see it. Although, yes, Scott Bessent might be advocating for harsher sanctions and secondary sanctions, but with Donald Trump's attempts to diplomatically somehow make Putin come to the negotiations table, I'm not sure that we're going to see it. Moreover, what we are seeing in China right now and all those, let's say, moves of the China administration to showcase how China is powerful and how China is actually drawing the new lines in this new geopolitical order and all those warm optics with Putin, all that is making things even more difficult. And for Scott Bessent, who is a China hawk also. So most probably we might see harsher sanctions, but they might be not on China, although they must be on China first of all, because China is the main beneficiary of what is happening. China is one of the main beneficiaries financially of Russia's war with Ukraine, and because China is selling all the goods to Russia. And China is getting cheap resources from Russia because Russia doesn't have anywhere to sell them to. Only the Asia-Pacific region. Russia cannot sell it to Europe anymore. So with all that, I suppose we might see harsher sanctions on every other country apart from China. Because for Scott Bessent, that would be obvious. That would be obvious. His obvious step, judging from what we've heard from him during his Congress hearings. But with the Trump administration, also we need to take into this big picture the diplomatic efforts and the views of President Trump himself. So although Scott Bessent is definitely talking about secondary sanctions and more sanctions, I am not sure that we're going to see anything like that.
We see that Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin have kicked off bilateral talks in Beijing on the eve of a massive military parade in the Chinese capital. Putin hailed relations between the countries, saying they were at an unprecedented level. Quote, "Dear friend, both I and the entire Russian delegation are pleased to meet once again with our Chinese friends and colleagues," Putin told Xi, according to a video published on the Kremlin's official Telegram messaging app. What concrete outcomes or agreements can be expected from the Xi-Putin bilateral talks beyond general declarations of friendship? How might this unprecedented level of these relations influence global energy markets, military cooperation, and sanctions evasion?
You're right in bullseye. This is the main question. What real consequences? Of course, we're looking at this picture. We're looking at the picture and how she used this summit to stage a pitch for the multipolar order and floated new instruments, the Bank of the Asia-Pacific Energy Platform, and some AI, working together on AI projects with 20 leaders in the room, including Putin and Modi. But those optics, those wonderful optics from the PR standpoint, we are seeing the declaration. And I suggest everyone to take a look at that declaration, to read that declaration, and most importantly, to compare it to previous year's declarations, because every meeting, every Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting, every summit had its declaration. And in that declaration, there is actually no substance. No substance at all. This is only a mere picture. This is a picture, yes, diplomatically, it might be even difficult to watch because, oh my God, the whole world, the Western world wants to see Putin isolated. And we see those warm optics with Modi, those handshakes, those coming hand in hand to Xi Jinping and talking to everyone. And yes, we are all seeing this. But let's look at the reality. Don't look at the pictures. Look at the documents. There is no essence in that document. There is no essence in the final declaration. No essence at all. And I must say that Shanghai Cooperation Organization has been there since 2001. And how many times since 2001 there were crises in the region? The last one was between India and Pakistan. It was right there in that exact region, in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization region. And they did nothing. They didn't react in any way. They didn't react at all. Whom we see reacting, whom we saw reacting? President Trump. President Trump, and yes, he said that he brought everything to halt and he prevented nuclear war from happening. Yes, this is also might be looked at as an exaggeration, but actually where was that cooperation organization while there was a conflict between two states right there in the region? No, it was nowhere to be found. So this is just a picture. And actually the only uniting force behind all those 20 plus nations that were in China for the summit was the anti-Western pitch. The anti-Western view, ties with the European Union, ties with the US remain quite not frozen, but chilly, if we're taking some of those states, or difficult relationship, at least the relationship between those states and Europe and the United States are difficult or challenging, let's put it diplomatically. But there is no substance in the declaration in the end. Yes, the pictures are quite powerful. Yes, so we are seeing the ties, the tighter ties, and probably we are seeing also this reverse Kissinger, let's say, not working. Russia is structurally dependent on China post-2022. And it makes durable US-Russia realignment unlikely, despite Trump's attempts. And Beijing is seeing this as a possibility right now. So the US attempt at reverse Kissinger, at making Beijing go away from being that close to Russia, from that partnership with Russia, it seems that it's not working. And yes, this organization right now is seen as, let's say, more powerful, but more powerful only from the PR standpoint as of now. So what shifted since, for example, 2022? Yes, Putin's isolation is being eased visibly, is being eased. Yes, this stages a new normalization of Russia, while China claims it's talking about stability in the region. The main thing is stability. And visibly, nobody, and I mean nobody, talked about Ukraine during that summit. No one, except for Vladimir Putin, of course, because in his speech he mentioned that the conflict, as he calls it, that is going on must be put to an end, although the efforts of the European powers that don't want this conflict, quote unquote, conflict to end, etc., etc. All the words that we've heard and we've seen on Russian propaganda television, or any time Putin speaks, including speaking to such prominent figures as American journalists, for example, as Tucker Carlson, but nobody else, no one else said anything about Ukraine. And that means two things. On the one hand, yes, they didn't want to, let's say, put more light onto what is happening, because everyone understands this war is not coming to an end. And the second thing, it also shows us that this organization can do nothing. What this organization can do? Nothing, barely nothing, because there is, again, as I've said, there is no substance to it at all. And of course, it's most important to look at the documents. And as you correctly pointed, yes, behind those pictures, what is behind those pictures? This is the main question. So let's not be swayed by the PR part of it all, and just look at the substance, and the substance is just not there. But I must note that, of course, the military parade that is expected in Beijing on September 3rd, that military parade is also an important part of the strategic theater, let's say, of Xi Jinping. She will pair history and hard power. This massed military show through Tiananmen Square with some new weapon systems with drones, and possibly new some hypersonic anti-ship systems that, as China is saying, will put them at the same, let's say, this near at least the United States and United States military power. So, of course, this is a goal. There is this narrative goal to recast the World War II memory, to, let's say, put nationalism amid economic troubles to the table, and showcase the world-class China capabilities and military capabilities geared to deter US intervention, just in case, around Taiwan. This is the main reason for that parade. parade. So again, this is Xi speaking almost directly to the United States through and above all those leaders that are going to be present there. And of course, this is, again, a mere picture. And the message that was sent by the organization, that the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the message was, we are anti-Europe, anti-United States. And the message that is going to be sent by the military parade is that we are as powerful as the United States, or more powerful than the United States. So again, this is just talking to Europe, talking to United States through those pictures, and no substance in the declaration. Just please, everyone, read the declaration and you'll see.
North Korea's Kim Jong-un crossed into China via train, state media say. The North Korean leader is set to attend a military parade alongside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. How could Kim Jong-un's presence alongside Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin influence regional security dynamics in East Asia? Does this event signal a deepening of military or political coordination between China, Russia, of course, and North Korea?
The presence of Kim Jong-un is, of course, also a big, let's say, PR move on that front. Because, again, North Korea must be visibly isolated. This visible isolation is being erased by such events. And Kim Jong-un, just like Vladimir Putin, is not actually traveling anywhere, but it's very important for him to travel to China, of course. So as we see, Europe-Russia relations, Europe-North Korea relations remain in a deep freeze. And China is structurally erasing it. And of course, it is making its influence more powerful in the Asia-Pacific region and with Russia also. This is also a way to showcase that China can influence Russia. The silence on Ukraine signals this business as usual. And for this military parade, and for Putin to be there, for Kim Jong-un to be there, this is also business as usual. Any joint language from Xi Jinping and Putin, Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un, is beyond symbolism. This is an announcement, let's say, of the China's power. This is the symbolism of the power that China extracts on Russia and on the region in general. And this movement is, of course, seen in Washington, definitely. And we've heard in the last meeting of President Trump with the South Korea leader, President Trump spoke about his special relations with Kim Jong-un and about the fact that, yes, he met with him personally and he doesn't see any reason why not to. Why not meet him again? And why not talk to him again? While President Trump said, as he points out, that if he didn't become the president of the United States in 2016, there would have been a war on the Korean Peninsula, and he states that he prevented a nuclear war in the Korean Peninsula, and right now, only because he spoke with Kim Jong-un. And right now, why not talk to him again? Why not meet him again? He doesn't see anything wrong with it. So Kim Jong-un's presence on the military parade, and that military parade in general, is again talking to the United States. China doesn't want Kim Jong-un talking to President Trump. China doesn't want Trump talking to Kim Jong-un. China wants to be the only power in the region. China is now, little by little, losing its influence in Latin America. We are not sure that this will happen, actually, that China will actually lose its influence in Latin America. But with American ships right now being by Venezuela, that is a real message to China, let's say, because as we know, President Trump deployed 8 military ships, 8 American military ships to the coasts, let's say, to nearby territories of Venezuela because of the Maduro regime being the head, as President Trump puts it, of the of narco cartels, of drug cartels in Latin America. And this is a war on drugs. This is a war on drug terrorism, as President Trump puts it. But it's also a message to China, because who is buying Venezuelan oil? 95% of Venezuelan oil is sold to China. And Venezuela is being so close to Russia. President Maduro, or if we are in the United States, let's say not president, but the person who is in the president's post, dictator Maduro, was at Russian military parade on May 9th in Moscow. He was present there in the Red Square. Maduro was there. So this is all, it's all messaging around influence for China. It's important for the United States not to communicate with North Korea. And they don't want Trump to communicate with Kim Jong-un. For the United States, it's important for Latin American countries not to be that close to China and not to be that influenced by China. And of course, if right now there is a regime change in Venezuela, that is what the United States are hoping for, deploying all those military ships and deploying almost 5,000 military men, American military men, to the region. This is the biggest military ramp up since actually the 80s. Since 1989 in that region, I mean, in the Caribbean in general, of the American troops. So this is all signaling if there is a regime change in Venezuela, of course, Venezuelan oil will be on the market again. It will not be sanctioned. So not only China will be buying it, or maybe China will not be buying it anymore, then India can buy it, then anyone else can buy it, anyone else that the United States want not to buy oil from Russia. So right now, Brazil can buy it, then Turkey can buy it, and anyone else. Coming back to your first question, it's all around those potential sanctions on countries that are buying Russian oil and Russian resources in general. If Venezuela opens up its market to the world, for that, they need a regime change, then all those countries buying Russian oil can buy Venezuelan oil in the American backyard, controlled by the United States. So this is all messaging, and this messaging, of course, first comes from China, with Kim Jong-un being present in the parade, and the United States reciprocating with those military ships around Venezuela.
The United States is demanding that Europe completely halt purchases of Russian oil and gas and impose secondary tariffs on India and China. How feasible is it for European countries to immediately stop all purchases of Russian oil and gas now?
This is one of the hardest questions, because for years and years, of course, if we look just geographically, merely geographically, of course, it's easier. Of course, it's cheaper for the European Union to buy from Russia. And especially now with those cheap prices, that would be let's say that would be perfect if there is a regime change in Russia. If, for example, everyone holding hands that is in the Kremlin goes to The Hague, is being imprisoned right now. Russia is leaving the territory of Ukraine, the territory that Russia has been trying to seize since 2014. Russia is leaving the territory of Georgia. Let's not forget the occupation of the part of Georgia by Russian forces since 2008. If Russia is leaving all those territories and stops its company of influence on Moldova and on other countries of Europe, then we can say that, for example, there is a regime change and those cheap resources can go to Europe. But right now, as of now, this must be stopped to influence Russian economics, to really change the minds of those in the Kremlin, because they must see that they cannot go on with those sanctions. And for that, of course, we must see the European Union and all the countries that are supporting Ukraine and are really understanding what is going on. That this is a war of civilizations, actually. We really need to see them stop purchasing Russian resources in general, not only oil, not only gas, Russian resources in general. Otherwise, this will never stop. Otherwise, the military machine of Putin will have fuel. I'm sorry for using, again, this talk of resources. They will have fuel to produce more weapons, to produce more soldiers, and by producing more soldiers, I mean pay more soldiers. And that is why, of course, the United States wants to see Europe stop buying everything. But again, coming back to geography, as we look at the map, we realize that throughout the years, throughout centuries and centuries, of course, it was easier and cheaper to buy from the next door neighbor, from Russia that's in the neighborhood, and not go to, for example, Venezuela, coming back to Venezuela, to get those resources from across the pond from Venezuela. Of course, it's easier. But right now, it's a political decision, and it's a civilizational decision. It's a decision that can change the future. And some of the European countries realize it. Some European countries are not that keen on looking into, let's say, the future and judging by Putin's actions and by Putin's words, because he's been quite open about his willingness to restore the Soviet Union and the Soviet power. And for Europe, it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge to step by step, not to just cut everything off, because this would mean higher prices for the people, and step by step saying no to Russian resources. And they need to continue on that path, although that path might be politically not that popular, because again, as in the United States, just the same in the European Union, and we can all relate to that. Yes, we can all understand it, of course. The Europeans are, first of all, thinking about their pocket, their bank account, and how much those resources, that gas or that fuel, costs in their country. So those governments need to make those difficult financial decisions, but we are seeing them step by step say no to Russian resources, and they need to continue on that path.
Alexandra, I sincerely thank you for this engaging and insightful conversation. Political analyst, European Leadership Network UK member Alexandra Filippenko was with us today. I wish you all the best and see you soon.
Thank you very much. See you soon.